And we're live with our 269th episode of Absolute AppSec. I'm Ken Johnson at CK Tricky on social media, joined by my co-host Seth Law at Seth Law on social media. Seth, say hi.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode. Ken and I are excited to be back, just the two of us chatting industry news and all the other spicy takes that we've had over the last couple of weeks, especially over the holidays. There's a lot of articles that came out. We'll get back to some of them, but there was a lot of things that happened that we did not necessarily talk about yet. So we're back, I guess, just the two of us. Before I dive into it, we are going to be running another Harnessing LLMs for Application Security training on January 23rd and 24th. Training.absoluteappsec.com. The link, the registration link will be posted shortly. We just decided that we were going to do that. And yeah, so it's not actually up on the training page yet, but it will be later today. So by this afternoon, it'll be there. It'll have, I'm pretty sure, the same cost as the other virtual trainings that we have been running. There are going to be opportunities next year for in-person training. We're still locking those down. Specifically, June, the DEF CON trainings will be in Seattle for those. We're still unsure on whether that's going to be practical secure code review or the Harnessing LLMs training. So if you have a preference, now is the time to speak up and let us know which one you would like to attend in person. And then there's a couple other conferences that we are submitting to. Let's see what else. I do want to give a shout out to Dry Run as the sponsor of this episode. Dry Run Security delivers near instant security code reviews and feels as if you've just hired a team of the best AppSec code reviewers. It gathers security context in just seconds after a developer makes a change. From that gathered context, the company's proprietary code review process interrogates each code change based on behaviors, not just static patterns. Try it free for yourself at dryrun.security.
I'm actually going to add to that too, Seth.
Yes, sorry. I was going to ask you for a new copy, so if you want to,
I'm actually going to mention something that has been since I'm getting a little promo spot here. I will mention this about Dry Run and what's been really, really fascinating to us as well as our customers, which is we have this notion of custom code policies. So essentially, this allows you to think like SEMGREP style rules or whatever your checks whatever you want to call it. But instead of looking for patterns or specific regex or specific patterns, think broader questions, think more behavioral questions, to include also things like, hey, here's a pattern of, how our endpoints look, and, hey, tell me if it's being introduced without authorization, for instance, or tell me if previously encrypted data is now being decrypted, or things like that. So it's been kind of fun, like not kind of fun, like really fun to watch people build their own bits, and we're expanding upon all of this custom policy stuff in the dashboard inside the product. So like, just imagine you've already got your like baseline case of SAST or whatever, but now you can actually build custom checks using LLM native back technology to actually look for the things that you're interested in without having to do all the work that we do. So anyways, to make that work well. So anyways, very exciting. I really want people to try this out. I think it's very, very cool, and I've never seen anything like it before. So I'm actually very excited about that.
Yep. Anyways, so check it out, right?
Like me blabbering now.
No, it's all good. I mean, you recently did that finding IDOR using LLMs, like walk through that process. We could, drop a link in there as well if you want to from that webcast or whatever you called it, right? Like
webinar or something like that.
Webinar, whatever it is, right? Because that was good. And that's a lot of the same sort of detail that we go through in the Harnessing LLMs course. Actually how to use these LLMs, which becomes a super interesting thing with all the data that I'm starting to shove to it as well from a summary perspective and learning. Our process is evolving as well. Redpoint, right? Like on how we are actually utilizing LLMs, how to best get detail out of them and where it actually fits. Because it's not all just pattern analysis. If anything, it struggles. Like if I throw code at it and ask it to identify all the places where this happens, that's the wrong place. That's the wrong way to go about it, right? Like it doesn't work that well. And there's not enough context. There's not enough scope. You've got to kind of plan things out. Anyway, I'm getting too much into it, but that's what we go into with the Harnessing LLMs course, is how to actually do that and structure your queries, structure your prompts so that the data that you're getting back out is actionable.
Yeah, and I mean, we talk like the interesting, that one of the things that's very interesting that we showed in that free webinar last week, which if I get the link for the recording, I'll share that with the group in Slack. So by the way, be on our Slack channel if you want to see that. But also in the course we talk about it too, and everybody's talking about agentic AI, right? Like that's the buzzword going around, and that's kind of the acknowledgement I think a lot of us had months ago or a year ago or whatever, whenever you came to that epiphany, was that there are limitations that can be bypassed or no longer limitations by using agent-based AI. And, not to go too far into it, but basically agent-based AI is giving the LLM an option of, hey, you don't have something, or you need an answer to answer a question, or you need data, you need whatever it is you need. Here's a way to get it. Here's some tool that allows you to search the web, look through a code base, whatever it is that you need to do, right? And you can build those on your own. You can build custom tools. Of course, there are agentic platforms. I know like some of the ones we talked about were like Crew AI and LangGraph and stuff like that. I think Microsoft's got one, Magentic or AutoGen or something. In any case, it just is a way to say like, hey, LLM, I'm going to ask you to do something. But to do that thing, you might have to go to these different resources. And really, when you look at O1 and AI, OpenAI, that's really what it looks like, right? It's just an agent-based, very complex LLM model. So if it doesn't know the answer or wants better accuracy or increased accuracy, that's also how these are being used, by the way. There's two concepts, like using them, agents to do judgment-based, like kind of detection of the answers, but also oh gosh, I'm already I'm having a brain fart. Yeah. Anyways, it'll come to me, but there's a dang. Why did I blink on that? We're getting old, Seth. This is what's happening. I'm in my 40s now.
Speak for yourself, right?
Yeah, sure. Just me. Only me that goes through this. Thanks, Seth. Really appreciate your empathy and
hey,
friendship on that one.
Hey, what goes around comes around. That's all I got to say.
Yeah, that is true. I've been giving you crap for years and years and years and years. Oh, sorry, human in the loop. That was the other thing. I told you I remember it.
Human in the loop.
Human in the loop, where you can actually have people, and this has sort of been a hot topic for SOC-based agentic AI, where a human goes and can vet, and help out with LLM, whatever LLM operation is happening. So, anyways, really interesting stuff. That's why you hear a lot about it. But yeah, I don't know. It's interesting to me.
It is.
So what do you want to dig into?
Yeah, I was dropping in just some links, just some background links on agentic AI and human in the loop, right? Human in the loop I find funny just because it is, right? Like this idea that like humans are using AI to enhance their understanding, and now we're like AI is now using humans to enhance their understanding of the questions, or to like it's one of those loops, right? Like never ending, like infinite loop patterns that's starting to happen. But
yep.
As far as articles go, I don't know where I want to start here. I'll be honest.
I want to start with my spicy one.
You want to start with the spicy one? Okay, we can do that. Yes.
All right.
Post. You want to post the link, or you want me to?
No, I'm not. Well, no, because I'm not going to post the link because I don't want to.
Okay.
I don't want to.
Go for it.
I'll give a background, but I'm not going to post any links because I don't want to. To be clear, Seth and I had a conversation about this. We've thought about this. This podcast is not a podcast where we, are rude to people or try to put others down, right? That having been said, we also call out things as we see them. Okay, I think like that's just neither of us have a problem with that. So in that vein, we're finding a balance here of not posting the exact article as well as some of the other resources that are falling out of this, but it kind of was an innocuous post. I spend, much like you, I'm sure, Seth, I have to spend some part of my day, usually either at night or in the very early morning, going through things like LinkedIn, X, whatever, Slack, just trying to catch up on what's newsletters, all kinds of different resources, just trying to keep up with what's going on in the industry. And I happen to come across, and I will say his name because, that way, if you want to go and look at the backstory of all this, you can. But David Lindner, our good friend, he's been on the podcast. We've worked with him. Great guy. He posted on LinkedIn about sort of a article that was, it was dubbed an open letter to the cybersecurity community. And in that article, the article basically says like, we shouldn't have, marketing centric conferences. We should have conferences focused on, collaboration, using cutting edge technology, to blah, blah, blah. All the same, literally, like it reads like how conferences dub themselves. So he's like saying basically that we should put on the conferences that we're putting on, but these conferences aren't good enough. Or something along those lines. It's like kind of hard to really follow the logic here, and I'll delve a little bit more into that. But the idea basically being, there's too much vendor influence and marketing and whatever inside of conferences, and the conferences themselves aren't providing enough value. Right? That was the premise. Right. And and he says, sponsors, talks about sponsor pitches and all that kind of stuff. Right. Well, kind of. I don't know if you have anything to add. I'm pausing to see if you have anything to add.
No. Yes, I mean, I think both of us want to like jump in with a response to that, right? Like because my initial take on the response, right? Like first of all, from Dave is like, we're probably giving too much attention to whoever it is, right? Like to the article that came out. But on the flip side, my gut reaction is if the conference isn't for you, don't attend the conference, right? Like I obviously somebody's getting value out of it, whether it's the person that's putting on the conference, whether it's the attendees that are there. Conferences are built for various audiences, and it's not always going to be for you, right? Like we always talk about this from a security or a developer conference perspective. There is a very different intended audience and a very different vibe going to B-sides versus going to, Django Conf or PyCon or, pick your developer conference. They're just different audiences and they have different intended purposes. There are a lot of marketing conferences that are out there or high level like CISO style conferences that are trying to add value to a CISO's life. And guess what? That's not necessarily something that I'm going to attend as an attendee. I may go and actually speak or try to do other marketing things there, but it's just a part of life, right? I don't know. I'm going too far probably, right? What was your reaction to it?
Well, I'll give you my reaction, but let me make sure because there's still some things I want to point out here before I kind of talk about my reaction to this. So just to some of the things that were in this article, right? Just to call this out. All right. It's not a very long letter, by the way. This is actually pretty short. But it read to me a little strange. It read to me as somebody who didn't really hadn't had a lot of experience inside of as at all levels of being a practitioner to managing a program to whatever, this wasn't somebody who had that background. This wasn't somebody who's been deeply invested in the community, who's been a community contributor. Didn't, because it read, and the reason I'm saying that is it read like absolute fucking nonsense. Like when I say that, and yeah, obviously I'm not mincing words here, but why I say that is it says stuff like, oh, we lack diverse voices in the industry. The same individuals and organizations often dominate the stage, excluding those that can benefit most from these events. Literally, there are how many conferences put on and events put on to address that specific issue with a lack of diversity. And I don't mean diversity in terms of diversity like a DEI. I mean diversity in the sense of, not having the same speaking or speaker lineup as maybe like another conference, right? So just having the same people talk from conference to conference to conference. Problem with that is there's a reason that these people do speak or hit conference after conference, is that they're usually compelling, experienced speakers who have something interesting to say, and it will draw the crowd in, and there's value in that. Like, if you, Seth, go and speak on the East Coast, that doesn't mean I don't think you should also come out to the West Coast and the Midwest and Canada and wherever else around the world to give that same message. You are a compelling speaker. You have interesting things to say. Of course, it doesn't make sense to say, well, you spoke there, so not here. That makes no sense to me. So that's kind of annoying right there. Also says, like, reflect on the structure of these gatherings. The value isn't the venue's grandeur or the number of exhibitors. It's the substance of the conversations, right? And the practicality of the solutions. Again, that reads to me like somebody who hasn't been to enough conferences. There are some conferences that are absolutely going to be like that and about that. And those have their own kind of reasons for that, and they've got their own people that go there and whatever. Like, that's cool. And to your point, if you don't want to go there, don't go there, whatever, go to the other ones. And there's lots of other conferences that it's basically putting down all of these people that put all of this, it's crapping on the community that puts a lot of work into solving these types and creating these different types of events for different audiences. And it's just picking that apart, right? But again, it doesn't feel like, when you read through all of the different things that it calls out, it's like, this just doesn't seem like somebody who knows enough to be commenting. So I went and I looked up the author because I was curious. It's just, like I said, I had this nagging feeling. So I looked up the author, and this author is 100% their entire career in marketing. And I'm not even sure if all of it was in security. So this is a marketing person who's making an article about how there shouldn't be marketing focused conferences. And, oh, by the way, promoting their own conference. And when you go to the sign up form, there is another link to a brochure. And when you click on that brochure about the event, what's in there? Their logo at the top, front and center. So great way to get lead gen and get contacts and put them into your funnels by running your own conference.
Mm-hmm.
Promoting their business. You're the one who called out the paid training that's inside of there.
Yeah.
And, oh, by the way, it's panels of CISOs. All right.
Yeah.
Now, with all that in mindset, I'll hand it over to you for your take on all that.
I'm never gonna, yeah, like it's pretty tone deaf, right? Like, hey, we shouldn't do this, but we're gonna do it, right? Like, yeah, it's a pretty hypocritical like statement to make about all the people that put in this time and effort to actually develop some content, put something out that people want to go to and attend. You're doing it wrong, so we're going to do it right. Like, it's the XKCD of, hey, there's 14 standards for this thing. Let's create one that, that's better than all the others. So now there's 15 standards, right? Like, and like, I don't want to discount, right? Like, hey, if you get people to come to your conference, that's great, right? Like, if it's profitable for you, you can generate leads and you can have a good conversation, and people if people take away something from it and it's valuable to them, they will attend. If it doesn't, they won't, right? Like, there's a reason why people go to DEF CON every single year. They've heard about it, right? But there are people that I know that don't like DEF CON and don't attend. Yeah, it's fine. It's not for everyone. Not every conference should be for everyone. And yeah, but if you're going to call it out, don't also in the same, in the same call out, announce your conference that's basically the same thing, just for your specific, your
Yeah.
specific group or your specific complaint, whatever it is, right? Like, I mean, I legitimately have beefs with security conferences and talks and focus and right, like specifically from large organizations and how things are run, and right, like there are legitimate complaints to actually improve things, but also like if you're going to complain about it, put your money where your mouth is and contribute, right? Like and not necessarily just in your own like little sphere, but contribute to the wider sphere. Volunteer, become an organizer, what have you, become a volunteer, try to make things better, start that conversation, submit a talk, whatever it is.
No, no, no.
Yeah.
Start your own conference.
Oh,
Get
yeah,
your
there we
own
go.
leads. Make sure CISOs attend. Make sure. Yeah. Anyways, I just don't. Yeah.
The
Like that's.
audacity. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. I'm with you
I
here.
I,
It's
I
just.
I I did love the placeholders of all the different events that they were going to have at this conference, and the one actual like event that was scheduled and was going to be there was the training that was paid for the company itself. So yeah.
Well, and the way the article started off too, it sounds like, because like I said, I mean, if you're wondering why I did the research, is because it says as an industry analyst, I've attended countless events over the years. So I'm like, oh, okay, well, maybe this person's got like a deep background and expertise. And then you read the rest of the article and you get that like sense that like, wait, this doesn't line up with how they started that article. This doesn't sound like somebody who actually has attended countless events over the years and has been yeah, technical to management level, doing that arc and being a part of it. Anyways, I think we've given that enough time, but I just, man, you know why it bothers me? If I had to be really succinct about why this is really gets under my skin, and I could be totally blowing this out of proportion, as could be, yeah, this could be the case, right? I don't know, whatever. But what does bother me about it is it's so indicative of the kind, like the very thing they're complaining about they're doing, and it's indicative of many of the conferences and events that we do make fun of, because it becomes a way for just somebody to get lead gen and to get contacts and to get their name out there and all of that. And I think there's a good balance. You can to be clear, I do think that there's a good, because I've praised companies for doing a good job at this, right? I have, and because I'm like, oh, if you do it right, cool, but you don't. This is not doing it the right way, by the way. It's clearly not doing it the right way. But if a company wants to put on something that's very valuable to the community and the community loves it and gets a lot out of it, and also it's beneficial for the company, that's mutually beneficial. When you go out
Yeah.
there and you say, oh, everybody sucks, the community hasn't done enough, they're not doing a good job. I don't, by the way, know much about the community, but hey, I'm a marketing person, so I'm setting up an obviously marketing centric uh, uh, event. It's like, it's so indicative of the things that like rub some of us the wrong way, I think. But that's why it got under
Yeah.
my skin anyways.
Well,
So
and
I just
I
had to
mean,
get it out and
and to
talk about it.
yeah, and to Dave's point too, right? Like the commercialization, the reason why they have these events is because it is a business, right? Like the reason that you're doing this is it's a business. Someone is paying you to go put on this event to gather more business. And like we had this for a number of years, right? Like 20 some odd years ago, as Black Hat and DEF CON were taking off, there was that split. Black Hat became more of a, kind of a commercial conference or a business conference as opposed to DEF CON, which was more of a research conference. And it still kind of has that bent to it. That people would complain, but I'm like, the reason that I was there or I was able to go to those events initially was because there was a business case for that, right? Like I am doing security for a business. Yes, I can go to DEF CON on my own dime and I can pay for that, but from a Black Hat perspective, from a business value perspective, those conferences exist and the industry exists to serve business. I don't know what else to give you there, right? Like it is going to always be a factor in running those conferences. That's it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely it
So
is.
anyway, all right, let's move on to, let me see. Do you want to talk about what sucks in security now that we're already on a nihilistic bent?
Yeah, let's do it. Let's just go right into it.
Um, Part of me too, like I know we were talking to Clint about having Maya on, and maybe we should still, but I did want to give a shout out to this because it did come out within the last week or so. TLDRSec. We had Clint on last week. Thank you, Clint, again for coming on. But this is from Maya, and I can't. What is her last? Yeah,
And
what
actually,
is it? Maya
while
Kara.
you're
Oh, yeah. Go ahead. Yes. What are we going to
no,
say?
no, no. Well, while you're saying that too, like, or while you're pulling it up, I also wanted to give like to Clint's credit. We actually asked him like, "Hey, do you mind talking about this last week during the podcast?" But he was like, "Maya did the work, right? Maya's the one who did all the work and deserves you know to discuss that work." So we should get Maya on, but yeah, like I don't know, I just thought that was a class act move of Clint. For
Yeah,
what it's
yeah.
worth.
He could have talked about it, but he did give credit to her. Um, I mean, it's a joint post, but it really is from Maya's research, right? And all of the work that she did talking to security leaders about their pain points in the industry. And now this isn't just an application security centric focus, which might be an interesting for us as Absolute AppSec to do because we do talk to people on a weekly basis. Might be interesting to gather the same sorts of pain points because I'm pretty sure it's going to be slightly different. But Maya goes through and asks these security leaders, CISOs, and others what their pain points are for, basically, she just asked them that what sucks in security. And this would be an interesting thing to do, a poll to run even in Slack itself. Before we go into uh, her findings, Ken, that is my question to you though as well, is like from your perspective what sucks in security, and then we'll dive into that before we summarize it all. I'm
Marketing
putting you on the
conferences are my
spot.
main complaint. uh,
Obviously.
Obviously, that's my real issue with security. Gosh, I don't know. It's probably been such a. Where do I begin? There's a million things that are wrong, right? Well, I mean, also like in the current climate, things just suck generally, right? Like hiring is rough. Budgets are really having a tough time. People are trying to manage that as best as they can. Travel's been yanked for a lot of people. Conferences have been yanked for a lot of people. So yeah, it's not been the most fun for the security community the last few years.
So
So or
funding. Yeah.
yeah, so like not not even
Well,
that
not.
so much as the companies went kind of over the top spending and hiring and all of that when their numbers went up, and then they yanked it back or drastically yanked it back. And then just it's although I feel like the economy is starting to level out, like companies are definitely not yet opening. It seems it's slowly, right? I mean, but not quite, like the floodgates haven't opened up. So I don't know. That'd probably be one. It's just the whole economic situation. That's not really security specific though. Um, I don't know. There's many things that have bothered me over the years. I don't know. Like I can't really pick out one thing.
Yeah.
What about you?
Yeah, I mean, we have different perspectives, right? Like, I know you're definitely building a company. You're talking to people on a daily basis about what what they need from a
Mm.
code security perspective and like in their pipelines. And so that's gonna differ from me as a third party consultant that's coming in and doing code reviews and doing penetration testing and building AppSec programs. I mean who what sucks in security in application security, I guess I should clarify that. um the division right now still that exists between security and development that I see in organizations, and lack of support, right?
What do you mean by do
We've
you mean division between developers and between engineers, or
I yes, I mean between developers and security engineers, um, I still see a rift between security goals and development goals, and their things aren't aligned. And that also rolls up into this lack of support from an executive level for application security specifically. And a lot of it is just it's like this misunderstanding of what needs to happen to secure products on, secure custom development that's happening in organizations. Um, like it honestly, it just sucks because it doesn't, from organization to organization, I see that same miscommunication and that same lack of understanding happening. And when people leave an organization, it reverts back to the norm. So we'll work with a company, we'll help somebody like build a program up. They decide to move on, and the company regresses because that one person has left, right? Whether that was somebody in management, whether that was a really talented security engineer that could talk to management and development. That's what I mean. Like that's kind of where I go to. I know that the answers from Maya's article are way outside of that.
wildly, different? Yeah.
Yeah.
I will say what there is one complaint. Okay, to just finish out what you were saying, um, yes, that makes a lot of sense because there is typically somebody who's like you're the champion of the program, and if they go, it's really dependent on who replaces them, if anyone replaces them, um,
Hmm.
to see how well that program is going to progress. That you might come in with somebody, or somebody might come in with wildly different ideas, may not be a good culture fit, their approach. So yeah, I could see that. The other thing I'll say that really I'm hearing from, because yeah, you're right. I talked to a lot of either, people who are trying to become customer, or to have, acquire as a customer, or, just existing customers, and talking to their teams. We communicate very frequently. And it seems like having the tools are the big issue in terms of having so many different tools that all do accomplish different jobs, and not really having like a one shop, or one shop stopping, or one product that can handle all of the things that they need to do well, because there are. So what you see products trying to tackle that, by building in multiple things that a shop might need into their product, but unfortunately, they're not really doing them well. So you have a lot of things, but none of them are done super, super well. That leads to a lot of frustrations. And the reality seems to be that, I think we all know that there are, of course, things that get introduced into your code bases, and changes that are made, or configurations that change, or whatever, that, yeah, they can be caught for sure by tooling or whatever, but it still doesn't, you know, address the underlying issue that organizations have stuff that's very like problematic in a specific way to them. So you have these tools trying to kind of just still, after all of this time, just trying to hit like a base level sort of canary in the coal mine, throw up a flag. But in terms that leaves such a wide plane of specific issues to that business and their code bases and what they deal with, that just are never going to be covered by a tool still. So no matter how they consolidate things, it just doesn't. You need people, right? You still need human beings, even with LLMs, even with AI, even with great tooling. You still need people to help dig in and run all this stuff. And that's where I kind of circle
Yes.
back to the budget thing,
It's never
right?
changed.
So the
Yeah.
the
Yep.
budget thing affects everything, from your tooling to your people to your culture, everything. It affects everything.
It does. Well, and I mean, like budget, you're right, because that even feeds into mine, like that support from upper management, from business, for like that understanding of where security should be and how much it takes to actually secure a product, um, and secure a network and secure everything else, right? Like it all feeds into that understanding and the support from the business to achieve those tasks. I asked in Slack, I got a couple of answers. FizzBuzz, right? Notifications, the number of vulnerability notifications that come in nowadays. Like, I mean, there is, I don't know, ASPM, Application Security Posture Management. What do I want to say here? I kind of hate Application Security Posture Management because it's a response to, hey, we haven't handled vulnerabilities or notifications well, so we're going to now build a whole new notification system that handles it for us, right? Anyway. And then Mark Hoops, getting your security job, extensible to automated tooling, to your credit, Ken, there. Mark's digging into that as well. Getting your first security job, I would totally agree. Again, it goes back to budget, but we are expecting people to come into these security jobs. Like, we want senior level talent, but we want it for entry level prices, right? Like, or we only have budget for an entry level person. So there's not a lot of entry level security jobs that are out there. I mean, I always encourage people getting into the industry to realistically take what they can get. And as long as there's got, like, if they want to get into security, get into a job that is security adjacent and then prove yourself out. But that's not always possible. So, it's a difficult row to hoe, I guess.
Get that so much from people, by the way. Like, that complaint comes because I definitely, especially because, I don't talk about it that much, but I do competitive Brazilian jiu-jitsu. So I meet a lot of people, I talk to a lot of people, and in that, and also it does seem to oddly attract InfoSec minded people for whatever reason. I can see some parallels. So I run into people that are kind of trying to get into the organization all the time, or the organization, the industry. And they talk about that. They say it's a real struggle to, and you and I don't know. We don't know. I mean, that's not a relevant topic for me. I know that. It's been a long time since I've had an entry level job or even been, so I don't know what it in today's climate it takes. But most of them are like basically saying, if you don't know someone, it's a huge uphill battle. I'll say though, I do give these folks materials and offer help, and the same thing happens that always happens. Not a lot of follow-up. Nobody seems to reach back out. Nobody seems to actually accomplish the things on the punch list. It's kind of two-way street there. But in any case, yeah, I'm sure it's very difficult, because when you and I started, this wasn't even a thing. This wasn't even a career field. So sky's the limit on that for us. I mean, we had all the opportunity in the world to get into it.
To jump into
now
it,
it's got degrees around it and industry stuff, and yeah, it's just a big thing now. So I'm sure it's got to be harder to break into.
Well, that's it, right? Like, there's a lot of this, like, oh, if I go get this certification, then I'll be qualified, right? Like, whether it is CISP, whether it is, one of the pen testing certifications, OSCP, right? Like, like there's a number of those that are out there, but none of those guarantee that you will actually land a job when you get done with it, right? Those certifications, when we did those, when we did those, it was because they wanted us to be like, we were already doing code review and, app assessments and other things. And they wanted to justify that, hey, our consultants actually have these expertise. And not only have they done this in the past, but look here, they've got a certification along with it. And so, yeah, it's difficult, right? Like, that's all I got to say there is it's a difficult way to go.
I do agree with them about the whole, like, networking aspect. I do feel that is, you should, I don't know if it's undervalued or overvalued or whatever, but wherever you place it, it should be at least something that you do, like in your priority list. It should be something that you absolutely do, because I would be nowhere if I hadn't networked with people. I mean, that's community participation. That's a lot of things that contribute. Heck, John Poulin. Why do we know John? John's amazing. He's a CTO over at Cloud Security Partners. Watch his career, the CVs that have dropped out of things he's worked on and he's submitted bugs for. Done amazing things. Built tools. Built great blog posts. Great, like all this stuff that he did, and all of that was because he started working with you and I on some open source project years ago. I mean, probably a decade and a half ago at this point, just at night for the heck of it. And it's like, yeah, that's kind of how that works. So,
well, yeah, I mean, you even talk about that, right? Like the reason that you and I started doing so much, like, okay, we were on site with a client, right? Like, and it's late at night, to your point, and we're like, hey, we want to try and explore this and like write something that could be useful to us in the future. And even though that project didn't take off, other things did, right? Like, not only our understanding of each other, but the space in and of itself expanded because we took the time to actually do that and make those connections. And like, I mean, we have nothing but, well, yeah, like we have a lot of good feelings about that team that we had at the time and the people that we dealt with, right? Like, yeah. And that's where a lot of it started, is just like making those connections. Going back to the conferences, right? Like, just because the content isn't necessarily something that you may be interested, there are probably people there that are in your same boat that you should talk to. And I know it's uncomfortable, right? Like, it's hard to make connections. It's hard to talk to people when you don't know. So sit down at the soldering table and just strike up a conversation, see what happens. Or at lunch, whatever it is, right? Like, most likely you'll start making some friends, and it'll be a better experience for you overall.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we went off about like first jobs, but let's talk about the article, What Sucks in Security. And this is definitely from a management perspective. The TLDR here, and I'm going to drop these into YouTube chat as well, right? Like Maya calls these out, these 3 different items that didn't do very well as far as like, hold on, I'm going to delete that comment. We'll put them in one at a time. First one, ticket-based and inconsistent access management. Second one, disparate vulnerability prioritization and remediation workflows. And third, obtaining and using SaaS logs. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that as what sucks about the security industry?
No, I actually think, and I know we've got another article we might be able to get to that actually details what I'll drop here right now, it's not this exact solution, but is a solution that works very much like this solution. So this is a GitHub blog from, I don't remember when, a while ago. I've talked about it on the podcast before. Doesn't mean I'm not going to talk about it again. So 2 years ago, roughly a little over 2 years ago, this entitlements app that we used at GitHub was open sourced. And it does, so some of the complaints around access control are, you submit a ticket, this takes time, managing that ticket queue is a whole thing, of course, but also just like, there's a lot of friction points. And again, we have an article that details a little bit more in depth on some of the friction points, but, access control is very, very difficult. Somebody wants to get into something temporarily. It's like, even if you federate somebody for a, let's say 8-hour window or 4-hour window, there's still access during that time, and yada, yada, yada. And sometimes there's not a lot of context behind. And again, the other article, which we haven't posted yet, talks about the lack of context. Like, you get a request, but there's maybe not like all the details that you need and a good understanding of why someone needs the access that they have. There's all kinds of little things you could pick apart in where it goes wrong. So one solution that GitHub had used internally was to obviously automate that. So we use a single sign-on provider, I won't sue, and a entitlements app to work with that system to say what you should have, and not just that system, other like HR systems, to say what you should have access to in the moment. And to do that, you have to submit a pull request, and there's time boxed bits around it. But when you submit the pull request, it has it needs a lot of context around hey, why are you doing this? Who are you doing this for? How long do you need access? Has other people that are in your chain that need to weigh in. It's really cool. It's a cool way I've always felt to quickly, and it doesn't take a lot of time, right? To get that access as well. You're not submitting a ticket, you're submitting a pull request. Um, and I know that sounds like, oh, it's one and the same. It's not. It's like because once it's merged and once it's gone through all the proper stuff, there's a bunch of background information that you have now. There's people involved that all attested to, you needing that approval, and it happens instantly once the pull request is merged. There's other, sort of metrics that can be collected. There can be, like logging, and I know that's your favorite, logging.
Logging.
There's lots of good things. Exactly. There's a lot of good things at attestations and whatever that can drop out of that. So did I post the article? Yeah, I did post the article. So check out that solution. Yeah. But I think access management and vulnerability management, I could go on, but I'm going to pause there. It's like, you should.
Well, and like from an
maybe.
access management perspective, and again, this view is from, like, Maya's talked to CISOs and basically security leadership, right? So their view is going to be very different than what we're seeing as application security engineers or whatever else, right? So hence the reason I do want to like start summarizing some of this as well. Like, it'd be interesting. But access management, you can see how this would be an issue to security leaders specifically, that we have all of these different systems that people need to access, and we want to use SSO, right? Like, we want a single sign-on solution for them to get into it. And then how do we actually manage like requests for that? Like, identity and access management is something that I've heard of consistently since I got into IT and security specifically, right? Like, I think back to my time at, iOmega, and even at the bank, as we were like, I was on the pen testing team, but the IT or the security team at that time was trying to solve IAM and access management. So this has been going on for 20 plus years. It's not something that's going to be solved. And it's partially due to the explosion of all these different tools and mechanisms and cloud environments and new technologies that we use within businesses that don't necessarily follow the standard of what you're posting and what you're, like GitHub has a solution here, but it's not implemented, right? Like, everybody that builds a new tool comes up with their own access management system that doesn't necessarily align with what's out there. Eventually they get to that point and they'll start to support SSO, and you will be able to integrate with Okta and other things. But the initial iterations don't always include that. It's not something that is built into the security requirements for new solutions as they're being built. It's always going to be a pain point. Like, that's what I've come down to, right? Like, yes, it sucks. You're right. It's always going to be a pain point. I don't think anything solves it that's out there nowadays, right? Vulnerability prioritization, remediation workflows. We're talking about, again, security posture management. How do we actually take these vulnerabilities and put them all into a single location and then actually solve them, right? Like, yes, you have things like Defect Dojo. You have ASPM tools that will, or, vulnerability management tools that will take vulnerability feeds, but it doesn't necessarily prioritize and give you a good way to actually, again, looking at it from that high level view, I've got all these vulnerabilities that we need to solve. How do we actually do that? Good luck, right? Like, good luck. Yeah. And logs, right? Like, I mean, all three of these things are problems that I saw, again, like 20 years ago when we were like dealing with new technology as it popped into an environment. And, at the time we're throwing it over, I was trying to remember what the tool was that we were using 20 years ago. I can't remember. But, throwing logs at it. Huh? Roles. Yeah. Something like that. Syslog.
But I was working
even before
years ago,
Syslog.
So I'm making fun of myself.
Yeah. Anyway, right? Like, but even throwing them all into Elasticsearch, right? Like, you get access to those logs, and the new like software as a service logs that may or may not actually have the detail you need in them. This is why I like get so like worked up about logging, is that we don't think about it as developers. We assume that CloudWatch can handle it all for you or whatever, right? Like whatever tool is out there. And it doesn't, right? Like it doesn't log the security bits that you actually need and that a CISO is actually concerned about, right? Yeah.
Oh man, I don't want to take us off on a. I have an inkling of a thought
Inkling of a
around
thought. Let's
what I.
go. Yeah.
Well, no, I'm not gonna. I'm gonna let this thought fester for a bit and see if it actually makes sense. I gotta think about it. But anyways, it's around logging and some revelations I've had around uh, more developer functionality focused logging and how that applies to security. So I'm gonna sit on that one for a little bit and think through it. But
Okay.
I will say
Yeah.
logging. I found. Yeah, I found even just from a developer perspective and in hosting and building a product that there are a lot of options for different things. So I mean, for instance, I could literally use, and I'm just naming this off the top of my head, not the actual products, but the number. Uh, Yeah, four at least four different log. Oh no, a fifth. So there's a fifth. Five logging solutions, five different types of logging solutions I'm using right now.
Yeah.
Because of what one lacks and doesn't give, and that the other provides. There's definitely no shortage of logging solutions. So being able to access those streams, I haven't I haven't really found to be super problematic, but I mean, I could see how, you know, I'm a small company, right? A very small company. And that's five. So imagine like I'm just trying to think about it from the perspective of somebody in like an enterprise, and then
Yeah.
like how well those products support the ingestion, and then where would you ingest them? I suppose one catch-all that people use a lot is like Splunk. Um, but yeah, I don't. I just I haven't felt this, but I could see it. Is what I'm trying to say. Like I haven't felt it directly, but I could totally see it
Well, and
happening
that's to Evan's
or
credit, like
being an
Run
issue.
Reveal, right? Like and we've had Evan on the podcast. Run Reveal is trying to solve some of that, but I also find it interesting that like the point is not just obtaining and getting access to the logs; it's actually using those, right? It's
Right.
easy to dump it
True.
all into Splunk, into Elasticsearch, but actually having that be relevant and then go to like the security monitoring team and alerting on it and using that and having those indicators in there is extremely difficult, right? Like it's especially when you take into account, okay, you're a small team, you've got 5 sets of logs and 5 different sources that you're pulling into that. Okay, that's one thing, but to your point, an enterprise that has 50 different sources and they're probably using logs across multiple different cloud platforms, multiple different, security products, right? Like all of this as it comes in, getting a signal out of that that actually is relevant takes effort and it takes actual engineering time. Uh, I mean, it's one of those things, right? Like you look at all 3 of these things, and I'm like, hey, man, right? Especially the last 2. This is probably somewhere that AI starts to make sense to bubble up things that are interesting, right? And
Yeah, it
could be
makes
used for
searching
that.
easier.
Yeah, it makes searching easier. It's not going to be it's not going to be a silver bullet to solving it, but it will actually enhance those that analysis, I should say.
Yeah, I
Anyway,
think you've touched on the ASPM vulnerability man. Well, I mean that's one. There's CSPM, ASPM. There's lots of different and before
yeah,
that it was just generalized as SIM. So vulnerability management is a thing. I who is it? Am I thinking of? There's a company. I went up to their booth. I think we're kind of we do it differently. Technically, maybe a competitor, but we're very. Oh, it was quiet. It was quiet with a Q.
Mhm.
They had like a dashboard. I don't know how well it works and whatever, but they had I like the concept though, which the dashboard had a feature where you could turn on. Essentially, they would use LLMs to do exactly what you said. Well, not for like log searching, but for LLMs to go through the data to find out what's like duplicate, what maybe can be like tossed out as not a real finding. Again, I don't know how well it works, but it looked cool in theory, right? So because that's one of the things that they're saying in this, and it is true, right? Like you get duplicates, you get issues with just sort of not knowing like what should the real priority of this thing be. One statement they said actually resonated with me, which is like finding bugs is a technical problem, fixing them is a human problem. Yeah, because finding bugs is a technical, whether you're using a person or a tool to find those bugs, definitely technical work. But in terms of getting people to fix them, it's not that people don't have the capability of fixing them or they're not smart enough or whatever. It definitely is more of a, do we have whatever, like is this a priority to us? That's a human decision, right? How well it's fixed, that's a human, I guess that's a technical issue. I guess, but probably more like prioritization or even just being I guess disciplined enough to actually ensure you resolve things. And also to your
Mhm.
point earlier about like executive buy-in, you need executives who are willing to spend the money, which is time, and the resources, which is also back to money. Um, sort of fixing these types of issues. So I
Yep.
don't know. Vulnerability management's a tough one. It just is, and I think it's a to be fair, I'd like to revisit that LLM statement you made because I do think like one thing that this is gonna like LLMs will help with, and because I've seen a bunch of articles over the last week on this, is using it to reduce false positive findings, like use it to vet things. This is from mostly I hear it talked about in a dynamic sense, believe it or not, rather than SaaS. But in any case, hopefully stuff like that will reduce, or technology like that will be used to reduce just the sheer volume of these tickets. Like there's a lot of useless stuff. And also, gosh, sorry, I'm going to continue ranting. But one other thing that bothers me, and this bothers me because it's how we've trained ourselves to be. So, like for instance, if you think about it, when we benchmark products, what do? We say, well, out of all of these findings, like how many findings basically comes down to how many findings did this tool get versus how many findings did this tool get. It's never, oh, this tool found these things, but it actually just said these aren't issues and deprioritized them for these reasons. That is a more interesting metric to me than saying, oh, no, we flagged everything. That's great, isn't it? It's like, no, you just created 150 tickets, which probably maybe two of those might have value and be worth something tracking, chasing down or whatever it is, right? So we've trained ourselves as an industry to think that more is better, not, yeah, we can find it, but we can also say like that's not a real thing for these reasons. Like that's probably anyway.
Well, and
I think we're
well,
training
okay,
ourselves
so
to create these
yeah,
vulnerabilities, basically.
no, we have, and I see this like this is always, man, again, right? Like this has been an issue for so many years because in marketing materials, in promoting of new products, what is it that marketers always use, right? Like it's this, hey, we identified this many vulnerabilities, we stopped this many attacks, right? From a firewall or whatever perspective, and you're like, yeah, but 99% of those were like connections to ports that you don't even have on your system. You know what I mean? Like, it's an Nmap scan. Take it down a notch, right? Like, but we're promoting based on normal activity that's going on online, and then claiming that we're so much better than our competitor because we blocked this number of attacks. And I still see this, right? I see this, right? Like from WordPress.com or WPEngine.com will send out like uh, a weekly email about like how well they're doing from a security perspective. And it's like, we have blocked 20 billion attacks. And I'm like, man, like that gives me no context outside of, wow, right? Like, yeah, Yeah, it speaks
Yeah,
to the
what
understanding of
are we
probably most of the
considering an
people
attack?
taking an attack. Yeah, exactly. I want to dig exactly. I want to dig a little bit deeper on this. Like, granted, I don't have the time. I don't necessarily want to deal with it. And to be fair, right? Like they're running a PHP like platform, so they're gonna have to block a lot of attacks, right? Like I understand that because of all of the malware that's out there that's going to be targeting them.
A lot of
Yes,
probing.
a lot of probing's going on.
Sorry,
But
PHP folks.
yeah, take it down a notch, right? Like, let's talk more about like the valid stuff that's going on. Man, and
Yeah,
we have not
that's
got
my point.
yeah,
Vanity
we've been going
metrics. That's what it is. It's vanity metrics,
vanity
and it's
metrics.
not real.
Ooh, I like that term, vanity metrics, right? Like that's something we should probably talk about more. Are these, is this idea of vanity metrics?
I know it does. It does definitely bother me because I've heard this. It's like, oh well, this called out these things. It's like, are you gonna fix those? Do you care about those? Are they like real? No. Then
Yeah,
why do you associate that as like a win? That's not a win. That's a problem. That's go buy an ASPM. You're gonna need it. Like, anyways.
yeah,
Yeah, we didn't get to the other thing because I did want to actually. This is. I'm not only. We don't really have a lot of time to talk about it, and it's kind of fine. You can just read the article. I just think that, and I'm going to post it real quick because I just want people to know this is a thing. And I'll post it in general too, just because I do think people should know about this. So Datadog has released a open source supply chain firewall, and I just think
mhm,
that's kind of neat. So like the idea is you go into your bash or zh shell resource file or whatever, or resource config file, whatever you use for your terminal, kind of create an alias for like pip install or npm install or whatever, and alias to running those commands, but with that scfw supply chain firewall prefix, and then it it is a firewall to detect if you are about to install something that is actually scary. I think it's just neat. That's all. I like the idea of it. When you see innovation, I like to call it out. You like to call it out. So yeah.
yeah, yeah, definitely, right? Like, and all of this is, and yeah, it's incredibly useful. And like, we didn't even get to that new Dread node, the Burp Ference project as well. Um, yeah, there are so many good things, right? Um, yeah, introducing supply chain firewall. Like, I'd be interested to see how that works, like the supply chain firewall stuff, because that, I mean, so many people are struggling with that, and we've talked about the software supply chain so much in here, right? Um,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
that
we do.
yeah,
And there hasn't been, I mean, there's kind of been just like new, in terms of like innovation, it's really just been either the package provider themselves doing more things to help, secure the ecosystem, or alternatively, it's just been like another company that pops up saying like, we do SCA better, and it's like, or a new offering within an existing company, we do SCA better, and it's like, that doesn't feel like innovation. But I think a firewall is kind of a neat idea, and like as somebody who doesn't want my developers or myself to install libraries that are like, a problem or are problematic. I just think that's kind of a cool way to do
yeah,
it. So,
it
anyways,
is, it's a good idea, right? And I mean, the traditional supply chain firewall is your own like software artifact repository, right? Like, whatever you want to call that, right? Or whatever technology you're using, that only the open source approved software is actually being pushed into it. But this idea of like, we're actually doing some sort of metric analysis and, looking for CVs or whatever it is, like that's, again, I'm going to have to do some more research because I think that'll be a useful tool moving forward.
yeah, same. I haven't done all the research in the world. The article's kind of new. The idea was interesting, and I think sometimes that's enough. Like to, whether that's the thing or somebody else built another variant, whatever. I like the idea though. I think it's worth exploring.
Yep. Cool. Well, good. We'll take a note on some of these. Next week, I think we're going to be off. because let me see. Yeah, date wise, we'll have to see what's going to happen as far as like episodes. Since next week is Christmas Eve, right? So
Yeah.
I don't know if we'll have an episode. We may like do something, between the break. I know we want to do some more after dark episodes and do some walkthroughs. Like it'd be fun to do some LLMs and some secure code review stuff again on open source projects. See if we can get in trouble by another project. That's my goal. Over the break. Nope, it's not. It's not just you, right? Like, yeah. Anyway, yeah, I don't know. I feel like it's been a good year, Ken. We've done quite a bit. I mean, 2024 from a like business perspective has been a lot, but from a podcast perspective, there's been quite a few good things that have happened this year.
Yeah, all the events have been. We've had all these events with folks where we like the high roller in Vegas was such a cool experience, and I was the whole time I was actually obviously really like nervous, like trying to get everybody in the right place and make sure everybody was there, and then people who didn't show. So yeah, sure, but once we were on that thing and we were going, it was really really fun. For me anyways, I thought it was really good time. So, and we had plenty of events like that.
Yeah.
We got to meet everybody or a lot of people in person. So it's really cool.
Yeah. Yep. And I know we don't necessarily have another happy hour scheduled yet, but are looking for it, or looking for opportunities to do that. I don't know if we're going to be back at Cactus Con. That's been a discussion point. You will be there.
Yeah, I will be. Yeah.
I mean, if you're going to be there, I think I will come down and maybe we will do a happy hour. Yeah, we'll have to decide what we want to do there, right? That's February time frame.
Dry Run's one of the sponsors, is why I'll definitely be there.
Okay. So, yeah, cool. Very cool. Let's see. Yeah, I don't know like what else is going to happen in 2025, but we are really appreciative of everyone that is a part of the community, right? Like that comments on Slack, that watches and listens to us via whatever platform is out there. Yeah, it's been a really great experience to be a part of, right? That's all. And
yeah, it's been awesome. And the support from everybody has been great. Like you said.
Yeah.
So.
And I don't know with that. Yeah. Supports. Yeah. If you want to support the podcast, merch, right? merch.appsec.com, or we are going to start doing more formal sponsorships like Redpoint and Dry Run and CSP in the past that have supported the podcast. If you are interested, reach out to us, Seth or Ken at appsec.com. We're trying to make it really quite economical for people to sponsor. So please reach out if you are interested. Yeah, I think that's everything. Ken, anything else before we call it today?
Thank you, everybody.
All right. We will talk to everybody soon. Join us in Slack. We'll continue the conversation there. Ciao.